Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming back to join this session. We've heard so much over the course of the last 2 days about the challenges, whether it be from climate change, whether it be the biodiversity loss, which somehow we've got to be part of the solution. We heard from Theo about farmers being entrepreneurs and the opportunities we need to try and create for them across Africa. When we reflect on some of that, I really do think here in the UK we have a unique opportunity. We have an amazing foundation with 70 million people living on this island that many people would give their right arm to have access to. And I think we've got to make sure that we take advantage of that opportunity. We've heard about the scale of the inflationary pressure. We know this isn't going away in the short term. And what that does for most of us is increase the level of risk within our businesses. And what we're going to hear about in this session is about building business resilience. Clearly, when you look at those challenges, business resilience takes many different courses, but it's all about how we are here, how we're preparing our farms and our businesses for tomorrow. We can't look backwards, we need to learn from the past, but we've got to make sure we're looking forward, that we're reacting to these challenges and we're preparing for the future. I know that as farmers, we always enjoy hearing from other farmers. We're inherently nosy, we love looking over the hedge, and you'll all enjoy hearing from this fantastic panel. So thank you very much for agreeing to take part today. We've got 6 very different, diverse businesses from across England and Wales being represented. We're going to hear 5 minutes from each panelist, and then we will be opening up for questions. And so I do urge you to go to the microphones and submit your questions. First up, we've got Ray Brown from Cheshire, Bidley Dairy. Ray.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. Good morning, conference. I have to congratulate the NFU on the conference so far. It's been a real enjoyable event, and especially enjoyed this morning's session as well. Well, and last night's dinner, that was thank you very much. So I've been asked really to talk about the changes we've made at our farm in the middle of Cheshire. Probably to start with, I ought to just say a little bit about what brought about those changes. I was involved. I've always felt as if I've had a can-do attitude to things in the past, and things I've been involved in is bringing the 2 Holstein and Friesian societies together, and then we, along with another farmer, John Loftus, tried to get a campaign going for the Federation of Milk Producers to get all milk producers under one umbrella, and then actually was involved a little bit with the FFA in setting that up. But I soon realised actually we need to be part of a bigger organisation to actually make those changes I was wanting. So I took on the role of NFU Dairy Board Chairman in the North West. And one of the meetings we had at that time, the speaker was saying about well, it was really as a result of a bit of a tiff that was going in 2014 between Russia and the Ukraine. And ironically, look where we are now, back again at that. But that tiff with Europe and Russians stopping buying products in from Europe ricocheted right through the dairy industry, I'm sure you'll all remember. But if you weren't on a supermarket contract, it really impacted very hard. Unfortunately, I was offered a supermarket contract, but as Dairy Board Chairman, I didn't like the idea of some of the members having it and some members not having it. So I paid very dearly for my morals over the years. But having said that, I probably would not have done what we've done if I had have taken that decision. So after that meeting, they were talking about extreme volatility, and I came out of that meeting and I thought, volatility in my book was ups and downs. All we were getting at that time were downs and downs, and it just seemed to be very depressing, really. And I thought, well, I can't affect things going on with Russia, I can't affect the Chinese pulling out of the market because they'd overbought. But at the same time, I was being told by people local to me, and the village is local, why can't we buy your milk? We're paying no less for our milk. Why can't we buy yours direct from the farm? And I thought, there's a lot of sense in that, actually, you know. So, but the time wasn't really right, because I'd already, I know one of the speakers later are talking about anaerobic digestion. I was in quite a bitter battle for 7 years trying to get an anaerobic digestion plant up and running on a commercial scale. It was a 5 megawatt AD plant, which was a petroleum storage depot for Manchester Airport I bought. So financially, I'd spent an awful lot of money on that. But by hook or by crook, we managed to get money together to build what is now known as Bidley Dairy. Quite a few people in the room might have heard of Bidley. If you're involved in the cattle world, would probably know Bidley as because we've been selling cattle for a long time. The cow families we've got go back 103 years. So we've been in the dairy job a long time, but, excuse me. But this was a complete new venture for us, which we did start off processing milk 100 years ago, and that so it kind of fizzled out. But I thought, well, you know, this is probably the right time and opportunity. And so we started building the dairy ourselves. I took 2 people off a farm that had the potential I could train up as builders, and so we built most of the dairy ourselves, did all the concrete and fiberglassing, and just got a company to install the equipment. And it's amazing how that's evolved. It has had its ups and downs. We've had some real hiccups along the way. I'm kind of a very trusting person. Oh, we've got to wrap it. And so, yeah, we'll talk about the ups and downs in a bit maybe, but yeah, it has evolved into doing ice cream. With lockdown and the COVID lockdown, we've ended up having to chuck a lot of cream away, which made us think we're not going to do that again. And we started making our own ice cream. And that's been a real success for us. At a recent, the latest International Dairy Awards, there's 5 classes for ice cream, and we won 4 golds and 2 silvers, which was, you know, we were blown away with, considering we'd only just started that. But anyway, we'll tell you a little bit more how it's evolved into a coffee shop and a bit of a location rather than just a dairy.
Thank you very much, Ray. I'm now going to go to Rob Halliday from Cornwall.
Good morning, conference. And we were told last night that 3 minutes in hustings can be a lifetime. Well, I'm sure 5 minutes of me after you've been in the walkabout could be considerably more, but we'll have a go. I run Cornish Valley Farming in South East Cornwall with my wife Louise and our 2 children, William and Isla. We have 2 core agricultural enterprises, a 20-year farm business tenancy with Cornwall Council that we started in 2017, and a share farming enterprise. We're roughly half and half organic and conventional. Alongside that, we run a contract forage wagon operation, green waste enterprise, a small glamping business, and I do some professional consultancy as a chartered surveyor. Louise also works off farm as a teacher, which to date has been my best return on investment. In total, we farm approximately 400 acres with 120 sucklers finishing all of our stock and 150 ewes and some cereals. And with this mix, we've tried to produce what I think will be a resilient business as we go into the post-BPS era. We aim to be sustainable without excessive external input to try and control our cost. We're limiting our inputs and we're driving our on-farm production. All of our feed is now home-produced. We undersow pea barley whole crop with herbal lays, and we also grow combinable pea and barley combi crop, which we crimp and use as finisher ration, alongside red clover, where we're aiming to try and not intervene with our soils too much with mechanical intervention, while having good livestock growth rates and fixing atmospheric nitrogen. And much of what I've learned on our organic farm is being used on our conventional farm. We're diverse to make the best use of our labour, machinery, and our farm asset profile. We do not buy machinery on spec for contracting, but rather we use it on our own farms to justify it, and then use excess capacity to build our contract operation. Our forage wagon business has become very specialist, And indeed, we've dropped the wider agricultural contracting that we were doing because we were too exposed in terms of capital employed and the return that we were making. We're looking to flatten our spikes in machinery and labour use and keep it all busy for as much of the year as possible. And where we can't do that, we're investing with our neighbours to try and pool our equipment. We must be efficient, and we're focusing heavily on genetic efficiency and using software to speed up our genetic gain. What we believe by eye to be good productive stock has indeed not been the case when we've analysed the data. We want animals to grow fast off forage, don't require individual intervention or assistance, and are capable of producing what the market requires, and we must be market focused. I'm sure this is what all farmers are trying to achieve, but we've found that technology has really helped to speed up the process exponentially. Ultimately, we must be profitable. Essentially, each element must be profitable in its own right. We run a diversified business to make use of what we have on the farm, not to mask a loss on the core farm enterprise. And that financial discipline is essential that we keep a constant focus on profitability. We have complementary income streams, and where possible, we look to try and use one element of the business to support the other, whether that's contracting, direct meat sales, or professional work. And we must enjoy what we do and be enabled beyond the farm gate. The farm must not take more out of us than we take out of it. This is particularly important for our employee, who works fairly level hours, isn't constantly stretched, and therefore has been with us for a long time. And we hope that we can build that stability of long-term training and growth. So we've got a couple of key things that we're trying to achieve. We're ring-fencing and reinvesting our BPS. We're investing heavily in buildings, livestock handling, technology, fencing, farm infrastructure, anything that can improve our use of our labour and machinery and make it as efficient as possible. This has very much been helped by a long-term tenancy where we have the time to invest and see the recuperation of that investment, but it's much harder on our shorter agreement, which runs from month to month. We're writing down our debt and we're limiting our burn rate exposure. And this is for two different reasons. We're trying to reduce our structural debt so that we've got the capability of taking on other farms should they come up in time, and therefore retain our critical mass if we do lose our share farming arrangement. And it's an issue that concerns a lot of businesses on short-term agreements. Reducing our burn rate exposure is much more for operational reasons, and we're trying to make sure that we can cope with any period of low pricing that may occur in the future. But we must continue to invest to be efficient. We can't stop investing. And there's two things that we're not. We're not reliant on environmental support payments. I view these as a grudge purchased by government, money they'd rather not be spending. And through dilution and raiding the pot, the farm fund will undoubtedly reduce over time. I'm willing to use these payments where we have intrinsic environmental functions, and obviously the way we farm, we do have those. But I do not predicate our business on their existence. And we're also not prepared to produce at any cost. I started my farming career with £800 to my name, and while I'm positive about the future, I'm not willing to blindly produce until I've spent all the capital that we've worked so hard to accumulate. As such, a key function of our resilience is constant financial monitoring to ensure that we produce cash surplus and capital growth. We're not, as an industry, operating in a safe space. The key threat being the government's approach to trade and ourselves as trade-offs. We're relatively young, keen, hard-working, and I sincerely hope that we have many years in an industry that I'm very privileged to be a part of.
Thank you very much, Rob. I hope your wife thinks that you're her best investment as well.
Probably not.
I'm now going to head over to Claire Jones. Now, many of you will have heard last night that Claire was awarded the Myrick Raymond Award, so congratulations. It's pretty harsh that you have to appear on a panel this morning after celebrating that last night. But Claire farms in Corwin in Denbighshire. Claire.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's quite a surprise, actually, when I got the call off NFU asking me to come and talk about resilience in my business, because at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're worming lambs and you need to get back to the house before 9 o'clock because you want to take the children to school, and you've got a meeting at 9 o'clock and you've got temperamental old machinery that you need to sort out, you don't actually feel resilient. But what I was told by the NFU, it's because we run 8 businesses from our house, from the kitchen table, from the laptop. And for me, for a farm resilient, I inherited the farm at quite a young age, at 19. It was a sheep farm. And I just, quickly, I realized that I had too many eggs in one basket. And I think resilience for me is somebody who can look at opportunities, take advantage of what you have on the farm. And all the businesses have grown organically. I've not gone out to pick on any of the businesses. My main advantage living in Wales is we've got hills, we've got water, which means we've got suitable places for hydro. So I built hydro back in 2012 and took advantage of the feed-in tariff, but realising that I was exporting, because it was just a sheep and beef farm, we weren't reusing much of the electricity, so I was selling the electricity. So I was thinking of other opportunities where I could take advantage of this free energy. So I invested in a free-range egg business. We supply Tesco's with over 10 million eggs a year now. And but I was still using free energy, so we started an oil plant, a cold-pressed rapeseed oil company, producing oil for Asda, Sainsbury's and Morrison's. And I'm proud to own the best Welsh rapeseed oil company, because we are the only Welsh rapeseed oil company. And then by producing the oil, we have the protein from the byproduct. So now I'm looking at my other opportunities. Is we all know that we all want to be carbon neutral by 2040. So I'm always constantly looking at opportunities. So my next step now is hopefully changing my hens to white hens, which they live longer. Taking soya out of the meal, the feed, and trying to utilize the rapeseed oil and the meal that we produce on the farm. That's and then also the thing with resilience, I feel, is people need to take. You've got to do it. You've got to be a doer, and you've got to take advantage and see opportunities quickly. I live very close to Snowdonia Park. We have 10 million tourists passing the farm annually, and I noticed with COVID that people were desperate to get away, and I also noticed that there was a new planning law where you could have 56 days free without planning. So within a week of making a decision, I had people on the mountain. It's a wild campsite, and it was an 80-acre field or mountain that grows grass and rocks. And I now, like John Davis, I now farm tourists, and it's great. And that 80-acre field has now become the most profitable field that I have on the farm. So. The business resilience. I honestly think it's in your heart. You are the resilience. It's your family. It's your team that you have behind you. The business will always be resilient if it's in you. You've got to be a positive person. You've got to be a glass half full kind of guy. And when people bring problems to you, the challenges, and sometimes there are opportunity, and going back to the carbon thing, people here maybe think it's a problem, it's an issue. I'm now going to be selling eggs to another competitor, Waitrose, and because it's carbon low, we're getting more money from it. So I've used that a problem to become now an advantage to the farm. So if there's one thing you need to take away, is your farm is only limited to your imagination. That's it.
Thank you very much. We're now heading over to Emily and Zoe Mead from Northamptonshire.
Good morning, conference. Luckily for you, I will be sharing my presentation with my daughter, Emily. I work in partnership with my husband, Peter, and we have 2 children, Emily and Charlie, who are both in their 20s now. Building resilience into our business to make it sustainable is nothing new. Back in 1994, the family farm in Essex was sold and we relocated to Northamptonshire, where we doubled in size. And then in 2009, Peter and his brother split the partnership so they could farm in their own right. After the split, we had a farm 50% bigger than the farm in Essex. We were contract farming and running a third-party storage business. But with the continued volatility of the industry, we could not see how our business was going to be sustainable for our children to join the business in the future. And this was an opportunity we wanted to achieve. So what did we do? Well, in 2014, we started planting 15 hectares of blueberries under polytunnels over a 4-year period. But why blueberries? We knew absolutely nothing about blueberries, and to be quite honest, we didn't even like eating them. So the idea came from a work colleague who had moved to Poland, and he was managing blueberry production. He knew we wanted to diversify. He knew we had an irrigation licence that wasn't being utilised, and he knew that blueberry consumption around the world was increasing. He was also very persuasive and fortunately willing to advise us on every step of our journey. However, growing blueberries was not an overnight decision, as it was going to be a high investment project with no return whatsoever for 2 years and little return for 5 years. So over 2 years of research was undertaken before the first plants were planted in the ground. This included trips to Poland and UK growers to reassure us that blueberries could taste delicious, learning how to grow, pick and pack them, gathering evidence that British blueberry production was a growing market and not a saturated market, researching varieties which could span the UK season and be suitable for top-tier sales, and joining a fruit cooperative so we had sales routes into major retailers. We also created a robust 6-year business plan and cash flow to get financial support from our bank, and this is an ongoing plan. So where are we today? In 2021, we picked 149 tonnes of blueberries. We packed 127 tonnes for Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's, and we employed 55 seasonal workers. Over the last 5 years, the UK blueberry market has grown by 42%, and we continue to plant new varieties, replacing less productive plants. I'm also very pleased to say that our son Charlie is now managing our arable operation, and Emily, who is a qualified chartered accountant, has now joined the business, and she's now managing product development.
So, as Mum said, we picked 148 tonne, but we only pack 127 of that for supermarket. So that extra 21 tonne is our waste product. Now, we have a certain amount of that is inedible to humans, green fruit or stalks or anything damaged by pests. That goes to a local pig farmer and is kept in the local food chain. But last year we managed to save 13 tonne, which we froze. So that is our fruit, which wouldn't last 7 days on a shelf. We have to provide a day to pack the fruit, a day to get the fruit to depot, and then 5 days on the shelf at supermarket. So the fruit that would only last 2 to 5 days is our sweetest and most flavoursome fruit. Our pack line is efficient enough to take that fruit out. We then freeze that, and I saw that as our biggest opportunity. We're reducing our waste from 14% to 5.5%. That fruit, I had so many options that I wanted to try, so I started on recipe development. I could see that farm shops are mainly a loss leader, coming from an accountancy background. So I wanted to build an e-commerce business where we can cut out the middleman. We can use social media, which is low in cost as long as you semi know what you're talking about, to market directly to our local community. So we've started working on a website, which will hopefully be ready in a couple of weeks. And we are also working with a number of experts and outsourcing producers in the local area. We now have a jam and chutney, which are produced by Friars Farm in Northampton, just down the road from us. We also have a gin liqueur and a vodka liqueur, which were not made locally, they were actually made down in Devon. But we felt it was important to find a producer that produces the way we want to work and is easy to communicate with. And I think to build any long-term relationship and take advantage of opportunity, that's essential. We also had to create our own brand, which wasn't without its difficulties. We went to 2 different people and ended up using a family friend. So all the logo design and label design has been our own, and we have spent a number of days trawling supermarkets and farm shops, looking at what made us focus on that label. So going forward, we need a way of shifting bulk quantity. As our harvests get bigger, we will have a greater amount of waste. We are developing a rosé wine, hopefully a sparkling wine, and we are also looking at fruit juicing, which is our biggest opportunity. Blueberries have 20% of your daily vitamin C allowance. They are full of antioxidants, vitamin A, B, E, and antioxidants, and magnesium. So we want to harness that and get it in a juice, which currently isn't on the market because fresh fruit is so labor intensive and has such high cost inputs. So we have been to a number of producers and no one in the UK is currently willing to produce blueberry juice for us. So if anyone here is looking to diversify and build resilience, please look at berry juicing and we will be your first contract.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to introduce Nick Renison from Cumbria.
Hi everyone, and thanks very much for the invitation to come today. So I'm Nick Renison, and I farm with my husband Reno in Cumbria. We are half an hour east of Penrith on the edge of the Pennines. We moved there in 2012. Canahoof is a 360-acre upland farm, and in 2012, just to put you in the picture, I had absolutely no interest in the environment, soil, trees. I was, I just wasn't on my radar at all. And we moved there with the aim of just wanting to farm. I'm from a farm, and Paul had been a farm manager, and we just wanted to farm. We came with high borrowings, and we knew we had to work off-farm as well. But it soon became apparent that life was going to be quite tough. And one of our off-farm jobs was working for a sheep genetic company called Innovis. And through that, we met the Nellis brothers. Angus is here today. And they farm organically on quite a big scale in Northumberland, and they graze in rotation. And I can remember Reno coming back from that meeting saying, well, first of all, why wasn't I taught this at college, rotational grazing, and that we were going to do this. So pretty much from that moment, we have been grazing, and it was just mainly sheep in rotation. It was extremely hodgepodge to begin with. We just kind of did what we could with some very basic electric fencing. And just as Ray said, we have had our ups and downs. So when you start grazing rotationally, and it is how grass likes to grow with plenty of rest periods, you grow lots more grass. So we did the typical farmer thing where we got lots more sheep. And so in 2015, the wheels fell off. We lambed 1,200 sheep, and we just created a monoculture. Now I see it as a monoculture of sheep and ryegrass. And monocultures don't work. I'm sorry to tell you all, I don't think they work. So now, 7 years later, the farm looks very, very much different. And we like to think we're stacking enterprises. So we now have 200 sheep, revelation, 70 sucklers, Aberdeen Angus, and we take the stalls through to 18 months. We sell some of that meat in boxes. We also have an egg mobile, which is small scale, but this year we'll be having 600 hens that follow the cows in rotation. And those eggs just sell themselves because they are just an absolute superfood. During the summer months, we have pastured poultry, pastured meat birds. They're fed, and we also have pigs. And the pigs and the chickens are fed a soya-free, palm oil-free feed. The cattle and sheep are all 100% grass-fed. And quite a topical point, but we just went cold turkey on fertilizer 7 years ago. So, and we also have a tiny glamping enterprise. And my point is that our outputs of our inputs are just not much. So the current fertilizer situation, luckily, doesn't affect us, so we're feeling slightly smug. We sell a lot of our food direct to the customer, and it's all about, now it's all about selling food and the nutrient density of the food and building that relationship with our customer. So we are more profitable. We've worked a lot with Chris Clark from Nethergill Associates, and he's all about maximum sustainable output, and I think we've learned a lot from that. And now I see, in comparison to where I was 10 years ago, I see nature as a real huge part of our business, and I think more holistically than I ever thought I would. And we farm in a very circular system, and biodiversity is key. And I never thought I'd get excited about birds and bumblebees and wildlife, but now it really is. We see it as a huge asset to our business. So going forward, I found yesterday, there was bits of yesterday that I found quite, not negative, but a little bit depressing. But for us, I'm relatively confident about where we're going in the future.
And now we have Henry and Edward Davao from Hampshire.
Hello, conference. Good morning. So before we tell you about our anaerobic digestion journey, it is really important to explain how we were able to do it. Luck, really. One of my siblings brought up the question of inheritance, that difficult word. Whilst I had been running the farm for many years as my mother's tenant, it is fair to say we realized that a 1,000-acre farm is not enough to support 3 generations. It was fortuitous that it forced us to make some tough decisions. We sold the main house, split up the properties between my brother and sister, and decided that I would inherit and run the farmland. My mother and I were faced with a stark choice. We either had to sell up and invest in some better yielding assets in London, or invest seriously into diversification. I'm happy to say we chose the latter, and in the end, bet the farm with a large mortgage. At the age of 51 in 2009, I was lucky to still have the energy and nerve to take on risk. Whilst dabbling with landfill gas generation on the farm, I visited Germany and came across AD plants. I'm delighted to say it is now my son's energy which we rely on. So I will ask him to explain to you the next part of our story.
By 2010, we had secured planning permission for a 500 kilowatt electricity generation plant. However, raising the money was more difficult than we had imagined. In those early days, the cash generation from the farm had to be able to service the new project debt. After meeting with many banks, the AMC came to our rescue. We had selected our technology provider, and we were able to start the project. When costs ran over, not helped by the German technology provider going into administration, the AMC helped again to assist us in finishing the plant. We exported the first electricity in 2012, and in 2013 discovered we had a large gas main running through our fields. I contacted Scotia Gas Networks, who I have to say were heroes in this story. Not only did they quickly do the feasibility study and introduce us to the technology providers for gas to grid, they agreed to finance and lease the equipment to us initially. We just had to raise the money to expand our AD plant 12-fold. Yet again, we met with many banks and financiers who understood solar panels and wind turbines, but not AD, let alone gas to grid. Here, finally, HSBC, who we are with now, accepted that the project was bigger than the farm and lent us money on the basis of future project cash flows, but again limited by the assets represented by the farm. In 2014, we put our first puff of gas into the gas grid, reaching full capacity by the end of 2015. Late in 2016, we completed the build of our CO2 recovery plant. In 2018, we had to take over our crop supply contracts from our main trader, who was struggling financially, suddenly having to buy HGVs, walking floor trailers, tankers, and forage harvesters. Luckily, we had done some contracting back in the noughties, so threw ourselves into the challenge of harvesting and ensiling over 8,000 acres per annum. In 2009, it was about improving the plant efficiency by 10%, and also thanks to HSBC buying out SGN from the gas to grid plant. 2021 has not only been about COVID, but efficiency, developing new technologies and continuous improvement and quality control. As well as adding value to our products and co-products, we have become retailers of our digestate and learnt many new skills. From an arable farm employing one person in 2011, we now employ over 40 fantastic people and take feedstocks from around 40 farms. We have farming, transport, accounting, engineering, electrical, software, and web developers in the team. It is a stimulating environment in which we are faced with technical challenges every day.
So to sum up, whilst I'm lucky we had sorted the inheritance from my mother and the business being able to include my eldest son, it has been a challenging journey, not least with raising the finance. We have built an infrastructure project and a team I hope will take the business onto further diversification over the next generation. Did we take a risk? Yes. Was it worth it? Definitely. But make sure you've sorted out your succession planning.
So please do keep your questions coming in. Ahead of the session, I sent some questions to all the panelists that I thought I might ask at the start of the session. Unfortunately, as we've gone through, I've decided on asking you something completely different, so apologies for that. But we're talking about business resilience, and what struck me during what you've said is that you are all the key people in your businesses. Do you spend any time at all on focusing on your personal resilience so that you are there for your business for the future? Because we've seen the survey results from the RABI, the pressures on rural mental health are very, very real. And I think it's critically important that we do focus on you as people and how you manage yourselves so that you're there for the future of your businesses. I don't know if there's anyone wanting to volunteer to take that head on. If not, thank you.
I have the perfect answer. A long-suffering wife. And without one of those, you can't do what we've done. It's not possible. I mean, during the project, I have to tell you, the house was a hotel. We had engineers staying with us 5, 6, 7 days a week. So she had to cook sometimes 10 meals, 20 meals a day. It's been extraordinary what she's done. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I'd say from my point of view, so I set up I'm a real dinosaur when it comes to a lot of this stuff. I'm very, very bloody minded, and I've needed quite a lot of that just to keep pushing through, but I've learned a bit along the way. I set up a WhatsApp group actually with a bunch of ex-Reading uni mates I'd met from my undergrad and my postgrad. It's very active. We meet 3 times a year. We go around and see each other's businesses. And it's not only good for challenge, and we're each trying to help each other out because we see things from a different perspective, which has been really helpful. But it's also just a good chance to meet people or meet up with people that are positive and trying to go on. And I think surrounding yourself with the right people is absolutely critical, and something that sticks in my head is don't take criticism from people that you wouldn't seek advice. There's plenty when you're trying to go up that would like to see you go down. And yeah, that's... That's been really important. And then I have two other things. I tell myself two things. Firstly, I'm always tougher than my situation, and that's where the grind comes in. You've just got to keep going. And secondly, it's about perspective. And I have family perspective. So my great-grandfather won the Victoria Cross, the Royal Marines, and he went to the other side of the world, and he got shot at point-blank range, carried out his attack, went home and lived to the age of 96. And I sometimes think when I'm stood in the mud, thinking about crying because it's raining, maybe it's time for a sense of perspective.
Sorry?
Yeah, well, I would definitely agree with the first comment. Long-suffering wife, she's sat up there now, and yeah, tremendous backing from that. But I've been very lucky, really. The whole family is involved in what we've done. So it is very much a succession plan, really, on our part. Rather than just growing a bigger farm business, we already milk 300 cows. I have a younger son, Ryan, and his wife, Becky, love the farm and love the challenges that the farm brings. And I have no worries. He's a better farmer than I ever was, to be fair. So I have no worries about running. I'll still get up at 2:45 to milk the cows, but only just until 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I go on to the building side. But yeah, really, it's my oldest son. Well, my daughter actually helps them on the farm. My oldest son and his wife run the dairy. And I think it's a case as you develop the business is make sure there's somebody to take it on, to take the pressure off. And we have WhatsApp groups for each of those enterprises that we're all kept informed of what's going on. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I'm probably the long-standing wife that puts up with quite a lot with I'm not quite sure why I'm sitting up here, but everything we have done actually has been a journey together. We've been married over 30 years, so from when the farm was sold in Essex, we've done some quite big things, 3 major things actually. And I think about, you know, our well-being. If we'd stayed at that farm in Essex, it was going to be a noose around our neck. How were we going to expand down there? We couldn't expand down there. Then we started this exciting journey with Peter's mother and his brother, looking around farms around the country. We saw some fantastic places. We had our highs, we had our lows when we weren't successful buying farms. Then with the family split, again, not an easy thing for farming business to go through, but there was light at the end of the tunnel. We were all going to have freedom as an individual family to take our businesses on where we wanted them to go. Then Peter and I were very much reflecting on what we wanted to do with the business. And again, if we stop still, that's when we start getting a bit low, or the business isn't doing very well. And with the children the age they were, it gave us another opportunity. Right, we can either just sit here moaning, we're very good at moaning, even if it's just about the weather, or we can actually do something about this. I think maybe we're adrenaline junkies. I've told Peter this is it, this is the end of this adrenaline journey, but I mean, it's a very fast-moving industry. We've got places we can take the Blueberries. But I think what keeps our well-being is by keep driving our business forward. And we meet so many interesting people along the journey. We've seen some fantastic farms, and that's what gets us out there and gets us through.
Thank you. Nick?
Yeah, I think it's just surrounding yourself with positive people. In the kind of regenerative world, there's like a web of people through Twitter and YouTube, and it's just having that positive can-do attitude, I think.
Clear?
I was just, yeah, positive people. I'm fortunate enough to, I won Agri Academy, a place on the Agri Academy, 12 farmers from Wales, all positive. And it's great. We get with friends, and we're able to put ideas together. I've also got a really good group on Twitter with farmers from all over the UK, and we've been doing it for the last probably 7 years. We've become friends, and they support you. And you also recently, I'm not very good at reading books, but I do like there's some really good audiobooks, and when you're on the tractor, I have actually noticed my productivity increases because I quite like listening to it, so I'll carry on and do some bit more work because, and there's some really good audiobooks available for mental health and helping, because everybody has really low days and everything is going wrong, and then within 2-3 hours sometimes everything is fine, and you just need to battle through and definitely have a really good team and a good family behind you.
Thank you very much for that. Could I please have Ali Kappa and Paul Brown to the microphones? I've got a question here from Peter Gadd. Where do you feel the Treasury could offer the greatest assistance in resilience at the farm gate level now, in the medium and the long term? And how do you think this will be forthcoming? So is it tax breaks? Is it grants? What is it that you need from Treasury to help you progress your businesses for the future? Ray, I'm going to come to you.
I think the tax break system is a great system, really, and that would help me a tremendous. I get a bit frustrated with grants, to be perfectly honest with you, because they kind of push you into doing something that timing might not be right for. And when we put the dairy up, it was a very stressful time, really. We'd already spent a lot of money on the AD project, which didn't go ahead. So it was, we really had to pace ourselves and just keep that water level there. That wasn't understood by the, you're up against timescales with the grants. Whereas, I think the tax break system would be a great benefit to actually to the future of our business.
Zoe, I could see you sort of nodding.
Yes. Well, we've had experience, I suppose, with grant funding. We've been successful on one round that did help us with the building of the pack house and equipment. And then a couple of years later, we were looking at funding a new punnet filler. Got accepted through the first hurdle. We had the expense and the hours and hours of work putting this grant application together, to be told at the last, no, you're unsuccessful. I think grants are not open to everybody. They're only open to you if you are doing a project at that time. And then with the grants being so oversubscribed and being competitive, there's no guarantee that you're going to get it. And I think the other issue with grants is the fact that we still have to fully fund what we are applying for before we get our 40% payment back, which, it's not easy. You don't always have that money in the bank. So grants just, I don't think, fit everybody. I think the tax break option is better.
Rob?
Farm building allowance, a 2% write-down is fundamentally ridiculous when I can get 100% relief on machinery, and that's a real restriction for us when we're trying to develop our infrastructure. And then also when it comes to tenancy agreements and treatment of the active farmer, that's absolutely key that we're recognising. That transcends just taxation. That goes across every form of scheme that's going.
I guess you may not have used grants, but you've got the renewable heat incentive, you've got the feed-in tariffs, and that's sort of another government support payment.
Well, we can talk about that one. That's quite a subject in itself. But I'd like to mention this. As a farmer, I'd never paid rates on farm buildings, and I went in to build an agricultural plant. We do not have any waste into this plant. It's purely energy crops. I was not expecting to pay any form of rates. It was never announced at the time of going into these schemes that there would be rates payable. We were hit initially with payable 15,000, which grew to 50,000, which grew to 250,000, which is now standing at £380,000 a year, and I'm told by our experts it's going to go up another 100,000 by 2023. And the bulk of our income is subsidy. So they're giving with the one hand to take it straight back with the other, when that subsidy is there to pay down the capital that'll be terminated after 20 years, because this is an asset that is worthless after 20 years unless they renew the subsidies or whatever will happen in the future. So the incoherent thinking that goes on here is extraordinary. So I go and talk one-to-one with Kwasi Kwarteng, because all this comes from Bays. He gets furious because I'm talking to him about something that's a treasury matter. Yet the subsidy is coming from him, but the tax is coming from another direction. No joined-up thinking here at all, and absolutely no help. And I can tell you, the man didn't even bother to actually write back to us and to tell us what the action plan is. So going on to the subsidies, the RHI is paid, we claim it every 3 months, and then they have the right to pay it to us within a 6-week window, except sometimes it drags into an 8-week window. So there's 5 months of cash flow. So the business is going like this. So when the government says, well, we should all pay on time, they need to learn the concept of paying on time. But above all, and when I've said to ministers, which I have done on numerous occasions, that it would be much better that they pay us monthly, which they could do with ease. I mean, with our team of programmers, we could have this sorted in no time at all. But and I say to them, you're paid monthly. And they say, of course we're paid monthly. And I say, well, why aren't I paid monthly? And I get the kind of comment which I got from Matt Hancock at the time when he said, well, you're a profitable business, so it doesn't really matter, does it? And that's the sort of people we're dealing with. It's a great shame.
And you strike some points there which have obviously resonated with the audience. But look, as we move to these new environmental schemes of the future, they have to give us a payment date and stick to it. Because I know you're all fed up with waiting for your payments. When you've already invested in the, whether it be the fencing, whether it be the environmental areas, you've made that investment, and waiting for the payment is simply not acceptable. And those contracts have to be meaningful and they have to be delivered, because that is something that makes a real difference to you all. And also the join up across government. I think we heard it a lot yesterday. We do need proper join up across government. This is, it can be made to look complicated, but actually interdepartmental working is something that should be the norm across government, but too often we see it break down between governments. And I think what we saw yesterday on the seasonal workers scheme is another example of that, where we've got two departments that clearly aren't functioning as we would like to see for the future. I've got another question before I go to the microphones from David Lord. And I am just going to give a plug to the Ahdb Shape the Future vote. But any of you that want to take part in that are levy players, please do register for the Ahdb vote, because there is an opportunity to get involved and to shape the future. This question is about knowledge exchange, and I think making sure that we have an active role in shaping the future of that organisation to make sure it's fit for purpose for you for the future is absolutely crucial. So please do take that opportunity. But how do you currently learn and exchange knowledge between your peers? What do you think the best way is for facilitating knowledge exchange between farmers to address the many challenges ahead? I'm going to come over to you, Emily. You're researching new businesses at the moment, new ideas. Where are you going for that information? How are you setting about it?
So we've actually been really lucky living in Northamptonshire. We have a food and drink group called Made in Northamptonshire. It is all small producers, artisan companies that have been through the exact same process we are going through. And I think the answer is you need people around you that are brutally honest and will tell you when you're just going off on a lead that you don't need to go down. And I think groups like this, having the NFU, having that knowledge sharing like the conference, it helps a lot. And I think actually during COVID, everyone noticed the lack of knowledge sharing that was going on. Obviously with your WhatsApp groups, that's a great facility to have, but when you don't have that background in agriculture, I've come out of accountancy, I haven't been through agri degrees, I haven't got agri groups around me. Having groups like Cultivate, young farmers, you have to throw yourself into them opportunities to meet people that are going through the same processes as you. And to be honest, sometimes it is difficult. You have to reach out and find whoever you can with that expertise. For instance, the juicing, we've recently been out to Holland for a day trip just to see a blueberry juicer that has been successful. And I think sometimes you just have to make that investment in your own future.
Nick?
Yeah, I think there's a huge power of farmer-to-farmer learning. If we hadn't been to the Nellises and seen their system and been inspired, they have given us a huge head start, I suppose. And we've kind of got the relationship with them, whereas if we've got a problem, we'll just ring them. And I think so. Farmer-to-farmer learning is just amazing, and I think I used to work for Ahdb and do knowledge exchange, and when you get a group of farmers together and they talk about not only the good things, but it's the bad things when things go wrong, I think it's really good.
Excellent. Claire?
Well, in Wales, we're lucky we have the Farming Connect, and I've taken advantage of nearly everything that is available there. I did knowledge exchange, went to Holland to see poultry when they were being dried, and that technology I've been able to bring back to Wales. The Agri Academy was with the Farming Connect, and also there's Ahdb Cumbria have loads of opportunities there to learn stuff. I think every day is a learning day, and going around farms, talking to farmers is also vital, I think, talking to friends. So yeah, you need to go out, you need to leave the farm to find this, and you need to be able to have the time and effort, because one day in Holland can mean huge implication for your business in the future.
Edward?
So I've actually done the Ahdb benchmarking, and I found that a really useful meeting to effectively, at multiple levels, be able to make sure that the costs that you're experiencing are relative to other farmers locally. So that was really a handy piece of tool in our arsenal to use. I've also actually just come off the Tesco Future Farmer Foundation scheme, and that was a really useful thing to build up a friendship group of like-minded people who have all been through a year programme, and you end up doing a load of different topics and subjects with them that really help you form a good connection. And then the other scheme that's out there at the moment is Help to Grow, which is a government scheme that anyone can apply for. And again, I'm right in the middle of that. It was only advertised on Facebook before Christmas, and I think it finishes July time. But the government are funding 90% of that, and it's university-led. So, and it's all online as well. So you just sit in sort of Teams meetings and go through that. But I believe that there's also an export one as well, if anyone wants to get into the exporting. I believe the government are funding universities to help push out education on how businesses can help achieve that.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go to Paul Brown.
Thanks, Chairman. Paul Brown from Staffordshire. Great speakers, by the way, very inspirational. My question's sort of directed at Ray, but applies to everybody. My grandfather, who was actually your father's uncle, Ray, left a small holding that he owned and moved to a tenanted farm 5 times the size so he could milk more cows and build up his dairy herd. Would you do the same today?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, actually, you know, I think we milk 300 cows, and that's an enjoyable number to milk. Both Ryan and Becky, his wife, are real cow. We really like the cows. It's not particular the numbers that drive them, and I don't think putting another 100 cows on would be an enjoyable experience for them, to be honest. It's in fact, we've cut down the cows from 350 to 300, and that's taken an amazing amount of stress out of it. And I think, it's that we're quite different to a lot of farmers. I know as far as our situation goes, we actually are a bit overstaffed. And I keep pinching lads off the farm to help me on the building side and different things. But they all enjoy it. They're very much, there's no I in teams, and we're a team. We all share the same WhatsApp messages. Everybody knows what's going on. And I think the farm is in a very good position, really. And now adding the dairy to it and the shop to it and the future planning we've got in place, I think it's created 5 different enterprises which future-proofs the business for the whole family. The whole family is involved in it, and they've all got parts which, if it ever comes to splitting it up, will be easily done. And that was one of the main drivers to doing what we've done.
And Zoe, obviously you moved from Essex up to Northamptonshire, so have sort of gone through a similar experience. And is that something that you could see your next generation doing in the future, or?
If they want to do that, I'm sure they would. We do have discussions about that sometimes, and we have our sleepless nights. Obviously, over the weekend, obviously with the news about seasonal workers, you end up with lots of questions and things like, and odd comments. So, can't we just sell up and move elsewhere? We've been through it. It's possible, or we're up for change. I mean, we'll do things, but it's not set in concrete that you've got to do that forever. So if Emily and Charlie decide that they want to do something, even if Peter and I are still around, we'd certainly sit, listen and discuss it and see what the best thing is for the family to do.
I think the one thing that's been very obvious is that all your all your farms have changed enormously over the last decade. So clearly, there's none of you that are sitting back and saying, we're not going to take the challenge on. Ali, would you like to come to the microphone, please?
I'd just like to echo what a brilliant panel. Thank you very much for sharing all your stories with us. My question is about resilience, and I guess I'm looking for what one lesson can you each share about the way in which you've built resilience in your business? What one thing can you leave us all with? Thank
I'm
you.
going to start up with Claire and then work down the line.
I think it's you as a person. I think it's in your heart. It's your team that you have, your family. There's plenty of really good businesses that are not doing it because they don't have that energy. And you can, if it's in you and you're a fighter, you will make it work. So it's you. You have to be resilient. And if you're resilient in yourself, your business will flourish.
I think understanding the mechanics of my business gives me the resilience to do more. So I focus a lot on where we are financially, and I can then go out on the farm confident that I know that we're doing the right thing. What I wouldn't want to do is be going out pushing cows around the yard thinking, do we keep 10 more, do we keep 10 less? I don't know the answer. So by doing an awful lot of homework and continually assessing where we are financially, that makes a huge difference to me personally.
I think ours would be that in our family we all know where we stand and what's going to happen when the generations start changing within our family, so that we're all in it together, and it's quite an open sort of format in our family.
I mean, I agree with what Edward is saying. I mean, it's clear I can now enjoy my life and he can do all the hard work.
I would say, as far as our business goes, really, never stop looking forward to what's coming down the road. And our carbon footprint is unbelievably low. The cows graze the fields in front of a dairy. They walk across the road to be milked. It comes over in a pipeline into the dairy, gets processed, goes through to where we have the vending machines. The milk comes straight out of there and into the customer's bottle, which they've bought the bottle and come refilling. And I think, if we look at carbon footprint and if we look at creating footfall then with the coffee shop and what have you, so people actually come and get the products, the dairy products, whether it be butter, cheese, all these different products we're going into and gone into, or ice cream, and to keep the people coming. It's actually become a very sociable place to come. And we're actually going to create a footpath to channel all the children through from the villages to come and get their ice cream.
I think it sounds a bit wishy-washy, but I think you've got to do what you love. And if you're producing a product, you've got to really believe in that product. So when people come up to the farm and then they can actually go in and collect the eggs and see them following the cows, and it's having that belief in what you're doing and being, like Ray says, you've got to be transparent. You've got to, I think that's how we're going to build up public support, of being transparent and always telling the truth about your product.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think resilience for Peter and myself has been driven by the next generation. That's what we get up for each day, to try and improve what we have, to try and leave something better for them to work with. I mean, the farm's moving across to regeneration. We've got the Blueberries. It's about embracing challenges, not giving up. I mean, with COVID, one of probably the biggest unforeseen challenges we ever sort of got hit with was the risk of not having any labour 2 years ago. We did employ 30 Eastern Europeans, but we also employed 30 local UK students who came and worked on the farm for the summer, picking and packing blueberries. We didn't lose any of them. We had returnees last year. We had 23 English people last year. We've already had 5 of them contact us this year to return. It's about changing, embracing challenges, and that helps to build resilience into our business.
Emily, anything from you?
I think I can only echo what everyone else has said. We're in a time where there's challenges thrown at you from every angle. I mean, the whole conference has been about the challenges the industry itself is facing, and it can be very negative, but we have to raise them problems to create change. And I think to be resilient, you have to be passionate about it, and you have to be willing to change and be willing to take up opportunities. And as a whole industry, we just have to fight for what we want if we want to keep going.
The next question I'm going to ask is from Joe Martin, and it's a subject which is very challenging for many family businesses, but we've obviously got some on the panel that are dealing with it. How is family succession handled? Are you working towards an end goal? Do you have an agreed family plan? Do you have a succession plan? I'm going to start off with you, Henry.
Thank you. Yes. Some people, the problem I had was that my mother had always decided that the inheritance would be equal amongst her 3 children. And therefore, the ability to take risk in that environment is very difficult, because you're then risking your siblings' inheritance. So I was lucky that back in 2009, my sister had a requirement for cash at the time. And my mother asked me for a solution. In my particular case, I'll tell you what I thought. I said to her, well, value up all your assets, assume that you're going to live another 25 years, discount it back, the asset value back to today's worth, give each, my brother and sister, a third based on that discount, and I won't inherit until your death. That way, that's how we did it. So essentially, I get a great deal more capital, but I have to wait for it longer. But then that created the problem that, having taken away all the juicy bits to be able to give them some cash, we were left with something that actually wasn't going to give us enough money going forwards in terms of revenue. And that's why we then, either we went and bought some flats in London, as I said earlier on, or we created we had to go up the value chain effectively and create a better business on the farm.
And Edward, what about from your perspective? Because clearly your father knows where he stands, but now it's crucial for you to be able to plan for the future as well.
So when I was 17, Dad said to me, there wasn't enough space on the farm. best go and sort of get some training in a different industry. So I actually went off and did a degree in stage and event management, and left the farm for about 4 or 5 years whilst I worked in the festival industry. And it was only because we had then done the succession down that we obviously got the AD plant going, and that's when it was then able to be able to then have me come back as well into the business. And we've already started and fairly well through the succession planning of the next generation as well, so that I and my brother and sister know where we stand as well.
Ray, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of outlaid my situation, and that's been the major part of the reason we've done what we've done, really, because the two sons, they're very entrepreneurial, but at the same time, and they have different goals, they have different things they wanted in life. Ryan's always loved his farming, and it was going to be Adam that was going to run the AD side of it, but when that didn't go ahead, and we thought, well, actually, what could bring value to the farm and actually to the area as well? And our biggest customer actually, or customers, are farm shops, because we're providing a branded product which they've really wanted, and so that the business really has flourished, and now they're so sort of happy with their situation, and so succession really has kind of evolved out of that, and going forward, it's a question is whether we have any more family to. I've got a couple of granddaughters now, but they've got lots of opportunities when they come through as to what they want to do. The farm, the shop's flourishing. There's a coffee shop and a venue. So I think there's lots of opportunities cropping up now, really, going forward.
We have got time for 1 or 2 more questions if anyone does want to ask them, but Zoe, over to you.
Well, as I've already mentioned, we have been through a partnership split. I mean, Peter's mother's still around, but she'd always made it very clear that the boys were going to, their succession was that they were going to be equal. And we were very fortunate that we managed to get that sorted. We sold some of the farm to buy Peter's brother out. So we've gone through, I suppose, one generation of getting the farm sorted. We're now obviously down to the next generation. For Peter and I, it's about succession. For the children, we're not going to force them. They haven't into the business. They've got to make their own choices. So, say Emily's been back on the farm for the last year.
9 months.
9 months. And Charlie has been back on the farm for 5 years. So until we are absolutely convinced that that is what they want to do for their future, I suppose our official succession planning is slightly on hold. Emily might decide she wants to go and earn some proper money back in the real world as an accountant, but I think you've just got to do these things sensibly and at the right pace.
Rob?
Yeah, so I come from a slightly different position that I'm first generation, but my parents own a farm. So my dad was a chartered surveyor, my mother was an architect, and they bought their farm in 1993. And I had nothing to do with it after I left university, went away and built up my own business. And I've only come back to the share farming as it was mutually beneficial. The chap that worked for them, looking after the small herd of cows they have, gave up, and they wanted somebody to do the work. And I was looking for more, having been fortunate to take on a county farm quite close by. But basically, we've got to this position whereby they've bought the farm, and it's their capital. And however hard it is for me to swallow, I will not inherit that farm. They will do what they want with it. So that's a double-edged sword, because the good thing about that is because I've known from day one that that is the situation, I've never predicated myself on going back there. So I've very much driven my own growth and my own business. And I view myself, my business model is farming other people's land. It's not farming my own. And we'll continue to go in that direction so that I'm not reliant on whatever they do decide to do in the future.
Rob, I'm just going to come on to the tenancy, because clearly there's been a lot of talk about how we make these new schemes work for tenants for the future. Mm-hmm. You managed to secure a 20-year tenancy. Mm-hmm. How do you see tenancies evolving over the future that give you the stability you need to be able to invest, that work for the landlord as well?
Yeah, the interesting thing was, so we've had 2 county council tenancies. We had what was called a starter farm, and we're now on a progression farm. And the starter farm, I think they gave us 7 years, then they gave us a year, then they said we'll extend it for 5. And in that time, we trickled on, and you constantly watch the calendar. When we took on the next farm, where we now are at Hepwell, they said, here's a 20-year tenancy, and immediately your mindset is completely changed. You can invest, and you can see a return on investment. And it suits both our business, because we can obviously make money out of what we're doing, and the landlord, we're improving their farm. So it's massively beneficial. We've got to stop seeing tenancy agreements as something that are a form of barrier and weapon to beat each other party with. It's to try and facilitate agreement between the 2 sides. And it's great where we are. And we've got 160 acres on that farm. It suits us down to the ground. We will get to a point where we outgrow it. The limitation that I now have is that when I look at the private sector, everything I see offered is 3, 4, 5 years. How can I give up the security of what I'm left with my council tenancy and move into the private sector unless they support us and make it capable, particularly in things like livestock, where it's such a long-term industry, make it capable for long-term investment?
Yeah, but you've got to... I'll take the landowner's side of the argument, if you like, here. If you've got capital tied up in land, you don't know what the government's going to do tomorrow from inheritance tax perspectives or what have you. So some agreements will help you from an inheritance tax point of view. Some agreements will not. So the government actually needs to give clarity on this kind of thing, and then landowners can do 20-year agreements, because I actually believe 20-year agreements is a really good way to go, because that's the best way of being able to maintain soils, buildings, and so on. 2-3 year agreements are a shocker, really, having been in that position of being a tenant. But you've also got to see the other side. So really, it's clarity from government, which will then open up the ability for tenants to be able to thrive.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Cliff, for you.
Yeah, with inheritance, I think it's really important that the younger generation get hold of the business as early as they can, because that's when they have the energy and the drive to bring that business along. Too often I've been buying rams and I'm having to deal with the grandfather who is 80 years old and the father was 50, and then there's another son at 30, and you think to yourself, that 30-year-old or 20-year-old, he's going to have to wait until he's... So, and I just think it's so important that people's perspective change. You know, I'm 40 now, I've got children, my risk is probably not as much as it was when I was younger. So if you want your business to survive and to flourish, you need to give the younger generation a quick start in life.
I think we've got a question up there. Microphone number 2, sorry, microphone number 2. We still can't hear you, Jane. Shout and I'll repeat it. Yeah, shout and I'll repeat it, Jane. So to summarise the question, it's basically about the reliance on environmental payments, and I guess their stability for the future, but also about how you've managed your stocking system and reduced your intensity of grazing.
Yeah. Well, so we are in a HLS, and then we've just gone into a new countryside stewardship scheme. And I think to farm in the uplands, we need to max out on the environment payments. We've got one big block of kind of fell land, 130 acres, and that's going into a woodland pasture, I think it is. And that's no sheep up there. But I think it's a sweeping statement, but I think we can't think that the more livestock we have, the more profitable we're going to be. There's a sweet spot. And so I see the uplands as a mix of producing really, really good food. And that doesn't mean Herdwick's finished in a shed, which happens quite a lot in the lakes. Producing really, really good nutrient-dense food, holding water, being a sponge. I would quite like to see beavers back in the uplands. I don't know if I get shot for saying that, but I would. Ecotourism. There's all kinds of things we can do in the uplands, and it's very flexible, and I think we need to be open-minded, and I think we need to go to government with ideas, because the danger is that they don't always think of everything we can do. And I think trees are part of it. We import, I think it's 80 or 90% of our timber. So I think we have got to start growing some timber. I have got a bit of a problem about growing wheat and feeding it to ruminants when they can grow on grass. I think that's something we need to look at an industry. Yeah, so I'm probably maybe more open-minded and a bit, maybe my head's in the shed, but I think we need to think of the uplands as a very mixed landscape where we can do lots of things.
I'd love to get into the detail of all that, but I think we'll move on. David Exwood, could you come to the microphone? Rob, I'd just like you to comment on, you were very clear about what you said about environmental payments, but maybe just highlight the risks that you see there.
Yeah, so we're in a slightly different position to Nick because we're a very productive lowland farm. And the problem I have is every time I cut production, it loads my fixed cost onto fewer and fewer units. So that you start struggling to get the core business to stand up on its own merit. And we're very fortunate in our landscape that we do have intrinsic value. We have rivers, we have bits of steep hill, we have woodland edges, we have a lot of hedgerows. And those are very, very easy wins for me to be claiming on. But what I don't want to do, not knowing where all these schemes will go in the future, is actually predicate our business on that receipt, because it's so unknown. We've got emerging carbon markets, biodiversity net gain markets. There's every different form of payment coming down in the future, and I think that private money will be very much the overtaking factor. But it's so unclear that I can't predicate what we're going to do now, and we've got to keep producing and farming as we go forwards. I can't stop investing now in the hope of a future income.
David.
Thank you, panel. We've all enjoyed hearing your stories this morning, and many will have found it inspiring. So my question to you is who or what inspired you to go on your journeys? You didn't have to take that first step. What made you start out?
I'm going to go the opposite way around. Emily, I'm going to start with you this time.
I'd say it wasn't a person. I never wanted to come back to the farm, being completely honest. I didn't see it as a sustainable way of taking my career, and I wanted to be in London. I wanted to make money. I wanted to be in my fancy suits and going to meetings, and I threw myself into that world, did my qualification, and I've grown up on the farm. I know the lifestyle, and I hated the lifestyle in London. I hated being surrounded by hundreds of people and feeling like you knew nobody. And I was coming home to the family farm, seeing what they were doing, seeing all the opportunity there. And I think being exposed to a different corporate background showed me the opportunity that was under my nose the whole time, which I hadn't seen growing up. And now I'm extremely grateful that I've been given the opportunity to move home and do my own project there, and I'm not being expected to do things the way that they've been done by my parents.
No, I mean, I think as far as taking our first steps with each journey we've been on, I think it's been the strength of Peter and myself and the family, where we've always agreed where that journey is going to take us. But before we do anything, we always do the groundwork.
Nick.
The first steps was really due out of financial need. A big mortgage focuses the mind, and I think maybe if we'd inherited a bought and paid for farm, I don't think I wouldn't be sitting here now. And also, key farms along the way, I've mentioned analysis already, but, and I think also the more we've got into it, the whole climate change and the countless storms and the huge weather changes, I think that's reaffirmed our decision.
There's no doubt that debt is a huge motivator, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, our big thing really, as every milk producer will know in the room, that not being in control of our own destiny. I like I say, through being stubborn, I had the opportunity, but I didn't take on a supermarket contract, and it was very tough. You know, I had a neighbour producing the same amount of milk as I was earning £300,000 a year, just purely more than we were, just purely because of milk price. And that frustration of not being able to control the future and succession planning along the way really drove us to doing something, and we needed to do it sooner rather than later. So,
Survival. One word, survival. Because it was either that or we were off the farm. And one other thing, and that was I'd always wanted to see whether it was possible to work with my son. And I could... and that actually was also one of the driving decisions. And I'm glad to be able to report that actually, although sometimes we do have some differences, it has actually helped us drive the business on in a pretty good way. I think that as farmers, we're extraordinarily privileged. We're one of the most privileged people in society because we do have the ability to work with our children and to create succession. And I don't think we can underestimate how great a privilege that is.
So having worked on the farm all the way until I was 17, I was obviously pretty gutted when Dad suggested that I go off into a different industry because the farm wasn't able to support me in it as well. So being able to come back in my mid-20s back into the farm was obviously a big driving force to go back into something that I truly enjoyed being involved in, and also very much enjoying technology and seeing where that is. This particular business suits me really well in pushing the boundaries of the technologies that we can deploy on the farm.
I think for me it's sheer childhood frustration. Not growing up on a farm or growing up on a very small farm as it was then, watching my neighbours late at night out combining, then going up to work for my godfather in Norfolk, doing harvest work, and probably something that if you've ever always been in the industry, maybe you don't appreciate for what it is, but the sheer intrinsic joy of farming, of being out and running that business is like no other. I've worked elsewhere, I've worked in offices, it's incomparable, and I'm very, very pleased to be farming.
For me, it's inheriting a farm and wanting to, I think it's just human nature that you want to be, making it more successful, and I'm hoping that when I retire, if my children want a farm, that they're going to inherit the farm in a better financial situation than I inherited, and I think people who inspire me is. My family, they're supportive because they want me to succeed, and it's important that you can be a part of the community as well. I think that is really, really important for a business to survive.
I opened this session by saying what a massive opportunity we have because of the 70 million people living on the island. I think what you've heard today, there's many different routes to success. But everyone here is taking that opportunity, creating their future, and it is a really exciting future. I've been absolutely fascinated. It's been great to be part of the panel. Thank you for being so honest, because I think it's the honesty which really came through. That's what everyone here will have learned from. So thank you very much for taking the time, for your honesty, your openness. And could I ask you to put your hands together to thank the panel for their time?